Live from the Deer and Deer Hunting headquarters here in Iola, Wisconsin. Welcome to Wednesday. Welcome once again to Deer Talk Now. I'm Dan Schmidt along with Brad Rux. Today we're into April and we're going to talk about getting ready for archery season. And Brad, this is something that you and I both love to do and love to talk about. So, what are you already doing?
It seems early, but like this year I've committed to shooting some turkeys with my bow. Where last year I just was on a rampage shooting them with the shotgun. I figured one's enough with a shotgun this year, then I'm going to switch over to the archery gear. So it really is a time to start figuring out and fine-tuning your archery gear. For me, that's what I like to do.
Me too. It's finally got a little bit of signs of spring here. The snow's melting. I actually got some of my targets outside already, trying to get that dried out a little bit. But that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be setting up our outdoor range at home, getting everything ready. I got my girls into it now too, so that's kind of fun. I know you got your kids involved in it, and getting everything ready. One thing, we've been doing this so long and kind of take for granted some of the things that we've learned over the years, and that's what we want to do today on Deer Talk, is talk about, we build this as 5 things you can do right now to be better archer for bow hunting season come this fall. What's one of the things that you would do, Brad, if you were one of these people out there struggling, and what are one of the things that you would do to try to improve on your bow setup?
One of the things that I realized a long time ago was the grip on the bow, because in my earlier ages or years, I used to like this big grip that you could really get your hand on it when you pulled back. And what that was doing, it was allowing me to torque my bow a whole lot more. The more you learn, you want a smaller grip. And one of the best things that I could do, I got this Matthews focus grip. And literally for me, that means every one of my bows that we shoot, that's the Matthews, if I put it on, it has the exact same grip, so that I'm able to get total consistency with using this. The other thing that I really like about it, it's got that rubbery grip.
It's kind of a tacky kind of feel to it.
Yeah, and it doesn't get as cold as what the wood ones do. And if you shoot it without a grip, it's your hands on the metal. So I would definitely check what type of grip. And if you can't get a grip, there's tons of other companies that have replaceable grips on there. Remember, smaller is better. So if you really want good consistency, you want very little bit of that grip touching your hand.
Smaller is better, and that's one thing that we get used to with shooting these modern bows. They have the thin grips, and what we talk about is when you shoot, you want this hand, your holding hand, just to kind of be open. You want that bow, you're just kind of pushing that bow away from you, and when you release that arrow, it's not shocking you, but it's that bow could literally fall out of your hand. That's what you want. Now, what does the focus grip do when you add, I know, but you could explain it. What does it do even to a thin grip?
Well, it basically means all the pressure is going to go down the center of that grip, which basically gives you perfect form. And the other thing that I always tell my son, because he's got a tendency, just like me, he likes to grip his bow like this. And literally, you should have your palm, the palm of your hand almost towards you, so that all that's really touching the bow is right up here in between your fingers. You got very little bit of contact with that bow grip when you're actually shooting the bow.
That's some great advice, Brad. One thing that I want to mention, and we do provide that product of the day every week from Shop Deer Hunting. All of these tips and much more, 2 hours worth of these tips, are in our product of the week this week at shopdeerhunting.com. And this is John Eberhardt. You know John from his writings in Deer and Deer Hunting magazine, tremendous bow hunter from Michigan. John has a DVD out called Professional Guide to Archery Mechanics. We have that on sale right now. It's $14.95. It's the best $14.95 you're going to spend. It's a 2-hour video. We have it up there in the featured spot at Shop Deer. That talks about not only grip placement, but it's going to talk about some of these other things we're talking about, arrow rests and shooting form and all these different things that when you add them all together, it's going to, it kind of seems a little intimidating, a little complicated when you first start out, and it's like, oh, I don't want to start all over again. Just a couple tweaks here and there, you're going to be a much better shooter. Check it out. It's the Professional Guide to Archery Mechanics DVD. That's the product of the week this week at Shop Deer. One thing that I wanted to talk about, and when I started here shooting with you, Brad, you remember I had one of the first old compounds. I was shooting with my fingers. I was shooting big, long aluminum arrows with feathers, and we've progressed. And that was 20 years ago, but we've progressed. One of the things that really set me over the top to become a much better shooter was a drop-away rest. And I cannot speak highly enough about, if you are having problems and you're shooting an old plunger style rest or just a just a traditional type of arrow rest, really should look into going to your pro shop or going on Shop Deer, looking at what we have. These drop-away rests are incredible. I personally use the one from QAD. It's the Quality Archery Designs Ultra Rest. There's a lot of other good ones out there. Matthews has one. I have a Matthews one on my other bow. But what this does is it's a capture rest. It holds your arrow up, and you can adjust these things now. You can adjust them to almost like a trigger, where it's a hair trigger, that the second you release that arrow, the rest is gone. There's
no contact.
No contact. You get perfect arrow clearance. That's one of the things that I found when combined with these other things. It's like, wow. I mean, I went from really good groups to really, really good groups out to farther distances. And I thought that was an important one to share. You know, a lot about mechanics is, you know, your form, but it's also how that arrow is getting off of your bow.
Well, especially the newer models that capture the actual arrow, because the one knock they always had is if you spot and stalk, which you and I are both basically tree stand hunters most of the time, so we really don't worry about that, or never did. But with the capture type, it actually holds your arrow in there anyway. So yeah, I would totally agree. And what you're eliminating again is poor form, because once that arrow drops away, it really doesn't matter if you're torquing a little bit, because that arrow's already leaving, you know, leaving the bow. It's not going to touch anymore, so you have a lot more accuracy.
Now, what about sights, Brad? What do you find in sights that's going to improve somebody's not only shooting form but their accuracy?
You know, and there's other good sights out there. There's a ton of them. Personally, I always like the really thin fiber. You know, one of the smaller fibers, because it really makes you pinpoint, and you literally want to make sure you don't get target panic where you pull the trigger. But one of the better products that I came across was this IQ bow sight. And at first I thought it was all gimmick. You know, basically they have the old Jim Widgeon, which was called the Scherza Peep, or No Peep, and they installed that right into the sight. And what it really does for you is totally eliminates bow torque. Because you can see, if you get used to looking at it, you see the dot basically inside a little green circle. And if that dot's right in the middle of it, you're right in line. Just put your pin on it and shoot. And the one thing that I really noticed is distance. When I started shooting distance, and I've always been a pretty decent distance shooter, but with this sight, I can easily shoot 20 yards further. So if I could shoot 80 yards before and group well, I can shoot 100 yards now and group well. And it's just because this really has shown little inconsistencies in my shooting form. And literally, once you get used to it, probably the first year,
it takes a little bit of getting used to, doesn't it?
I looked at it all the time, and now I really don't look at it at all, other than if I'm shooting at a whitetail, because I think sometimes when I'm excited, or you're wearing all the big bulky clothes, you know, sometimes mentally, you know, this just makes me cue one more time. Check my sight. Yes, it's on. You know, everything's in line. Put the pin on the deer. Release.
Well, nice thing about this sight too is, and I was going to take that one step further. This is a sight that you have to learn how to use it. It's not that big of a deal, but once you get that thing set up, like you said, it's kind of second nature. One thing that helped me, as you remember, way back in the day, I only shot 3 sight pins. And once I got up to, I said, oh, I don't need more than 3. I'm only going to shoot out to 30 yards anyways. Well, once we started practicing, and I got a 5-pin sight, I have a 7-pin sight, and just at that archery range, shooting those longer distances, never ever going to take a shot at a deer at 60, 70 yards. I'm just not going to do it. But just those pins, and like you said, those fine pins, fiber optic pins, the really thin ones that I mean, they glow bright, but they're tiny, really helps you out, rather than having, you know, I mean, there's some great bargain sights out there, but the pins are a little bit bigger. And, you know, you're just not as pinpoint.
Yeah.
And the more you practice, like you say, you shoot how you practice, the more you practice at longer distances and really trying to hone those really tight groups in really helps. That's a great bow sight.
There's another one out there that I thought was really cool, and it's not brand new this year. It was cool. It was brand new 2 years ago, and that's the one by Trophy Ridge. And that's the one where when you sight in your bow sight, you always sight in your 20-yard pin. And this has the little screw that you actually screw down your 30-yard pin. But once you have that placed, it's actually calculating your bow speed, and it's moving all the pins at once, and it automatically calculates how far the gaps are between them. So once you get your 20 and your 30-yard pins lined up, you're good. I mean, and it's a 7-pin sight. You can shoot. I tried it last year. I set it in my 20 and 30, and I didn't even go back to 40 or 50. I went back to 60 yards, and boom, it was right on the money. I was like, this thing is cool.
It is cool, and there's a lot of gadgets. Like I said, you can get kind of overwhelmed here with some of the options. What should I take? I just say pick 1 or 2 items. No matter what you're doing, whether you're bow hunting or gun hunting,
yes.
1 or 2 things, master those, and you're going to be better. One thing that I want to touch on, a couple things. The next thing, the obvious thing is that I really saw improvements in is when I went to really quality arrow.
Yeah.
I shot a lot of bargain basement, priced arrows, $39 for a dozen. Say, man, I'm really saving some money to shoot a lot of deer with these. Yeah, you can kill deer with them, and you do. I did. But really, from an accuracy standpoint, you get yourself a real quality arrow.
It's huge.
Huge difference. Now they're expensive. I mean, you're not going to get around, spending cheap to have a quality arrow. This is one in particular that we've both shot the past 2 seasons. The Carbon Express Red Arrow. I also like the Carbon Express. Well, the Maxima Hunter line in general is a good arrow. The KVs are what I had shot for a couple years before that. But these red arrows in particular, why are they good? Basically, what they've done is they've built technology into an arrow, which you have to read about it to really learn about it. But as we know, is when this arrow, when that leaves your bow, it flexes. And every arrow does that. So if you see that in a slow-mo, that arrow, I can't hardly do it here, but it's going to be kind of going like that through the air, and it flexes. Well, what they've done with this Carbon Express arrow is they've built technology in here to make it a stiffer front. So to control the oscillation of that arrow as it's getting off your bow is going to keep that thing more accurate. Yeah. A really good arrow. I've shot a pile of deer with these already, but what I've seen is I've really increased my distance, and I've really tightened up my groups, and it has to do with a lot with this arrow.
Again, that's what makes the difference. The technology in that arrow allows a person to shoot longer distances. So those cheaper arrows, when you're shooting 15, 20 yards, I mean, yeah, you can kill some whitetails
great.
with
You
them.
pack them into a small paper plate, and you think you're doing good, but now you want to take that out a little bit. It really makes a difference.
Yeah, and that's the way to go. I mean,
really makes a difference. A couple other things with arrows and how they're getting off your bow in general. One thing that you actually showed me this, golly, it's 15, 16 years ago, something as simple as a loop, and a lot of people might not know that, is if you start off in archery, you're shooting, okay, you're probably using a release at this point. Not too many people start with their fingers anymore, but you're shooting off the string, you're attaching to the string and shooting. Well, a string loop, which is a small little half-inch piece of cord that ties to your string. And what does this help you with, Brad? Because you're the one who actually taught me about this.
Well, it's going to put equal pressure on the string below and above the arrow. So when you pull it back, you're not trying to pinch that arrow or making the knock work harder on one end or the other end, which is going to give you more consistency.
More consistency.
The other thing is, when you're really excited, I think it's easier. Everybody says it's harder to get it on the loop. I find it way easier to get it on the loop than I used to on the string.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I actually stay buckled in the entire time I'm in a stand anyways, but I agree with you 100% there. A loop is going to make you more consistent. That consistency is going to lead to that arrow getting off the rest. So all these things together. So you got a rest, drop away rest, it's getting that arrow out of there. You got a really high quality arrow. All these things are combining that are going to make you a much more accurate bow hunter. To finish up on that point, with a loop, and like I said, most people are shooting a release. I shoot both. I shoot a caliper release. Most times I shoot a true fire. They make some good ones. There's a lot of good ones out there. There's also hook style releases for loops, and maybe you could explain what that means to somebody who might not know.
The hook is basically, imagine a fish hook, only it's not really sharp, and it just goes around. It just hooks in, and it pulls back on the string. They're kind of scary right away because with the caliper that you're talking about, basically it pinches,
shuts it and it's locked.
Yeah, but literally my son got used to one of the hooks, and for me, just mentally, for whatever reason, I just don't shoot him as well. But that's where he started with, and he's a great shot with it, never has any kind of problem. And really the beauty of the hook is you can get it on that string loop in a hurry. I mean, it just loops right in and you're ready to go.
You're ready to rock.
Compared to us, if it's a big deer and you're watching the deer, pretty soon you got to look down because you got to make sure the caliper is
trying to make sure that's snapped in there, it's shut, and it's not catching the loop a little bit, because we've all done that. You might have had a little bit of the loop in there and it pulls free. That eliminates that. A hook style release eliminates that. We have more information, and we actually have these on our website. You just click over on the other side of the page, just go to Archery, type that into the search box, or go to Shop Deer. We have Fletcher style releases. We have, oh gosh, there's a ton of them. There's True Fires. There's all sorts of, there's caliper releases and hook style releases in there. You know, in a short segment that we have here, that I would say if somebody could take away from this, if you want to improve, okay, you can improve your grip on your bow, you can improve your sight on your bow, you can improve your rest on your bow, you can add a shooting loop, you can go to a really quality arrow. And I think if you do one or two of these things, I think you'd be pretty well off this summer and going into this fall.
Absolutely. If a guy's not using a drop away, I think a drop away is going to improve his you know, accuracy definitely. You know, and these other things will definitely help as well. It's all, you know, the big thing about archery is practice, practice, practice. A lot of people don't like to practice. I know you love to practice. I love to practice. I mean, as soon as it got warm out here, our bows came out to the front porch, and that's where they are now, because when I go outside, yeah, we might not practice for an hour or 2 hours, but I'm going to shoot 5 arrows at the target every time I go outside. And that's what I think can really help a person.
That's good advice. And the thing that I would add on to what Brad says there is, this sight is not going to make you a better archer. An arrow, just going out and buying this stuff's not going to make you a better archer. You have to practice. You have to love this. You have to really get into archery. These things will make it easier. You will find that out as you upgrade your equipment. But just one thing is not a magic bullet. You have to really like this. You have to live it. And like you said, just shoot a couple arrows every day. We do that when we get to August. Just one arrow, 2 arrows. I'm running to work. My bow's in the garage. Grab it off the hook. Target's right there in the backyard. Whack, whack, good. Yeah. And that's really good practice, especially for hunting, especially when you're kind of stressed out and you got to be somewhere. That's almost like mimicking that adrenaline rush that you get when you're hunting.
Well, the beauty there is too, you know, you're building up your muscles, because I think a lot of guys, when they shoot a bow, you know, it's macho to shoot more poundage. So like when I was 18, I was shooting 80, 85 pounds. Now I'm shooting 70, and I know you really dropped down in poundage the last couple of years, and it's improved your accuracy.
Oh, that's actually one of the best things that I left out that I should have added was, if you really want to see your accuracy improve, drop your weight. And I got that from Ted Nugent. I thought, oh man, I got to keep it up with all these young guys and keep shooting 70 pounds. Well, I dropped down to 65. I'm at 54 pounds right now. That doesn't seem like much, but I've never shot as accurate, because it's comfortable and it's consistency. And now I can't shoot the distances that I used to, but when I'm practicing at home, I still can shoot 60 yards very, very accurately.
That's the name of the game right there.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, in a nutshell, those are some tips that hopefully can help you improve your game this summer and this fall, and ultimately for bow hunting, whitetails out in the woods where you hunt. That's it for this week. Thank you for joining us on Deer Talk Now. Join us again next week, where we're going to have a special guest in-house again. For Brad Rux, I'm Dan Schmidt. We'll see you next time.